Jake Morasan wiped the sweat from his forehead as he stared at the massive alien structure floating in the darkness of space. The thing was huge, bigger than anything humans had ever built. It looked like a giant metal flower with thousands of petals, each one the size of a city block. The whole station was dark and silent, like a dead giant sleeping in the void. "Holy cow," whispered Lisa Kane, standing next to him at the observation window. "That thing must be 40 kilometers across." Jake nodded slowly. He had been an engineer for 20 years, but nothing had prepared him for this. The alien station called Outpost Theta 7 was unlike anything in human space. It had been drifting here in the Kepler 442 system for who knows how long, waiting for someone to find it. Captain Helen Carter's voice crackled over the intercom. "Engineering team, report to the shuttle bay. We're going aboard that thing." Jake gathered his tools and headed for the shuttle bay with Lisa and Kevin Brooks, his two best engineers. The three of them had worked together for 5 years aboard the exploration ship UES Harbinger. They were good at fixing things, and right now, that dead alien station looked like it needed a lot of fixing. The shuttle ride over to the station was quiet. Everyone was nervous. They had no idea what they would find inside. The station's builders had vanished centuries ago, leaving behind only this massive structure. Earth scientists called them the architects, but nobody knew what they really looked like or where they had gone. The shuttle docked at what looked like an airlock. Jake put on his helmet and checked his suit systems. Everything looked good. He had enough air for 12 hours and enough battery power for his tools to last 2 days. That should be plenty of time to take a look around and get back to the ship. The airlock opened with a soft hiss. Jake stepped inside and immediately felt the difference. The gravity was lighter than Earth normal, but not by much. The air was toxic to humans, so they had to keep their suits sealed. Emergency lights flickered on as they walked down a long corridor. "The station's still got some power," Kevin said, pointing his scanner at the walls. "Not much, but it's there." Jake looked around in wonder. The corridor was beautiful in a strange way. The walls were smooth and curved, made of some kind of metal that seemed to glow with its own light. There were no sharp corners anywhere. Everything flowed together like it had been grown rather than built. They walked for what felt like hours, mapping the station's layout. The place was enormous inside, with corridors that seemed to go on forever. Jake found rooms full of strange machines that he could not identify. Some looked like they might be computers, others looked like they might be power generators. Everything was silent and still. "Jake, you need to see this," Lisa called from up ahead. She was standing in front of a massive door that had opened when she approached. Beyond it was a room so big that Jake could not see the other side. The ceiling disappeared into darkness above them. "It's like a cathedral," Kevin whispered. Jake stepped into the room and gasped. In the center was a tower that stretched up into the darkness. It was covered in blinking lights and humming with some kind of energy. This had to be the station's main power core. "I'm going to take a closer look," Jake said. He walked toward the tower, his boots echoing in the vast space. The closer he got, the more impressed he became. The engineering was incredible. Every part of the tower seemed to serve a purpose. There were no wasted materials, no unnecessary decorations. It was perfect. Jake plugged his scanner into what looked like a control panel. Numbers flashed across his screen, but he could not make sense of them. The alien technology was too advanced. It was like trying to understand a computer using stone. "Age tools?" "Jake, we need to head back," Lisa's voice came through his comb. "The captain wants us back on the ship in 2 hours." "Just give me a few more minutes," Jake replied. He was fascinated by what he was seeing. The power core was damaged, but not beyond repair. With the right tools and enough time, he might be able to get it working again. Jake made his way deeper into the station, following what looked like maintenance tunnels. The tunnels were smaller than the main corridors, but they were still big enough for him to walk upright. He found rooms full of spare parts and tools that the architects had left behind. Everything was organized perfectly, like they had planned to come back someday. He was examining a strange device that looked like it might be a welding tool when his cum crackled with static. "Jake, come in. Jake, do you copy?" The voice was faint and breaking up. Jake tried to respond, but got only static in return. He must be too deep in the station for his cum to work properly. He would have to head back toward the surface. Jake started walking back the way he had come, but the tunnels all looked the same. He took a wrong turn and found himself in a section he had never seen before. The walls here were different, covered in what looked like writing in an alien language. The symbols glowed with a soft blue light. He was studying the symbols when he heard a loud rumbling sound. The station shook and Jake was thrown to the floor. Emergency lights flashed red and an alarm began to sound. Something was wrong. Jake got to his feet and ran toward what he hoped was the way out. The station shook again, harder this time. Pieces of the ceiling began to fall. Jake dodged a large chunk of metal and kept running. He reached a junction and stopped. He could go left toward what he thought was the main corridor, or right toward what might be another exit. The station shook again, and Jake heard the sound of metal tearing. He chose left and ran as fast as he could. The corridor ahead was blocked by fallen debris. Jake tried to climb over it, but more pieces fell from the ceiling. He was trapped. He tried his cum again, but still got only static. The station's hull must be blocking the signal. Jake looked around frantically. There had to be another way. Out, he spotted a small opening in the wall that looked like it might lead to another tunnel. He crawled through it just as more debris crashed down behind him. The tunnel was dark and narrow. Jake used his suit's lights to find his way. The tunnel seemed to go on forever, twisting and turning through the station's interior. Jake began to worry that he was getting more lost, but he had no choice but to keep going. Finally, Jake emerged into a large room. This one was different from the others. It was filled with what looked like sleeping pods, hundreds of them arranged in neat rows. Each pod was connected to the others by thick cables that pulsed with dim light. Jake approached one of the pods and looked inside. It was empty, but there were signs that someone had once used it. The inside was shaped for a body, but not a human body. The aliens had been taller and thinner than humans, with longer arms and legs. Jake's cum suddenly crackled to life. All personnel returned to the Harbinger immediately. Emergency departure in 30 minutes. Jake tried to respond, but his cum was working only one way. He could hear them, but they could not hear him. He had to get back to the shuttle bay, but he was completely lost in the maze of tunnels and corridors. Jake ran through the station, trying to find his way back. Every corridor looked the same. Every room was empty and silent. He was running out of time, and he was running out of options. The station had become a trap, and Jake was caught in it. Jake woke up in darkness with pain shooting through his left arm. His head felt like someone had hit it with a hammer. He tried to move and felt debris pressing down on his chest. The station was quiet now, too quiet. The emergency alarms had stopped. He activated his suit's lights and looked around. A piece of the ceiling had fallen and pinned him to the floor. Jake pushed against it with his good arm and managed to wiggle free. His left arm was definitely broken, but his suit was still intact. That was good. If his suit had been torn, he would already be dead. Jake checked his suit's status display. The readout made his heart sink. His oxygen tank had been damaged in the collapse. He had maybe 6 hours of air left, 8 if he was very careful about how much he breathed. His water recycler was working, but his food supplies were back on. The shuttle. Hello? Can anyone hear me? Jake spoke into his cum, but got only static in return. He was alone on a dead alien station with no way to call for help. The Harbinger was probably long gone by now. Captain Carter would never leave her ship in danger to search for one missing crew member. Jake forced himself to think clearly. Panic would only waste oxygen. He was an engineer, and engineers solved problems. His first problem was air. He needed to find a way to get more oxygen, or find a safe place with breathable atmosphere. He remembered seeing atmospheric processors in some of the station's rooms. If he could get one working, it might be able to create air he could breathe. But first, he needed to get out of this collapsed section. Jake climbed over the debris and found a tunnel that led away from the damage. His suit's lights showed the Way ahead was clear. He walked carefully, testing each step. The last thing he needed was to fall through a weak floor. After an hour of walking, Jake found himself in a section of the station that looked different from the others. The walls here were covered in symbols that glowed with a soft green light. The symbols seemed to pulse, like they were alive. Jake had seen writing like this before, but these symbols were different somehow. He found a room with what looked like a control panel. Jake approached it carefully and touched one of the glowing symbols. The panel came to life, displaying patterns of light that meant nothing to him. But something was happening. The air in the room began to move, and Jake heard the sound of machinery starting up. Jake checked his suit's sensors. The room's atmosphere was changing. It was still toxic to humans, but it was getting better. The atmospheric processor was working, cleaning the air and adding oxygen. Jake realized that the station systems were still functional, just dormant. They were waiting for someone to wake them up. Jake spent the next few hours exploring the section and learning how the controls worked. He could not read the alien language, but he was good at figuring out how machines worked. The symbols seemed to respond to touch, and different combinations produced different results. He found a room with what looked like a medical bay. There were devices that might be healing machines, but Jake did not dare use them. He had no idea what they were designed for. Instead, he used his suit's medical kit to set his broken arm and give himself painkillers. Jake's oxygen was running low. He had maybe 2 hours left. He needed to find a solution fast. He returned to the atmospheric processor and studied its controls more carefully. There had to be a way to make it work faster. Jake tried different combinations of symbols. Some did nothing. Others made the machine work differently. Finally, he found a sequence that made the processor hum with more power. The air quality readings on his suit began to improve faster. Jake made a decision that could kill him. He found a small chamber connected to the atmospheric processor and sealed himself inside. Then he removed his helmet and took a careful breath. The air was thin and tasted strange, but it was breathable. Jake's lungs burned a little, but he was alive. The atmospheric processor was working. He had found a way to survive. Over the next few days, Jake explored more of the station. He found rooms full of strange machines and devices. Some looked like they might be computers, others looked like they might be factories. Everything was beautifully designed and perfectly organized. Jake began to understand that the station was not just a structure, it was a machine. Every part of it had a purpose. The sleeping pods he had found were connected to a central system that monitored everything. The atmospheric processors were part of a network that could control the environment in any part of the station. Jake found a room that was clearly a workshop. There were tools and materials that the station's builders had left behind. Jake picked up what looked like a wrench and was amazed at how perfectly it fit his hand. The aliens had been similar to humans in size and shape. Jake began to experiment with the alien tools. They were much more advanced than anything humans had built. A device that looked like a simple hammer could cut through metal like butter. A tool that looked like a screwdriver could weld materials together at the molecular level. Jake's biggest discovery came when he found the station's central computer. It was in a room at the heart of the station, surrounded by displays and controls. When Jake approached, the computer came to life. Screens lit up with alien text and diagrams. Jake could not read the text, but he could understand the diagrams. They showed the station's systems and how they connected to each other. Jake realized that the station was like a giant puzzle, with each system depending on the others. The computer seemed to be trying to communicate with him. It showed him pictures of the station when it was fully operational. Jake saw rooms full of light and activity with alien figures moving through the corridors. The station had once been home to thousands of beings. Jake began to understand what had happened. The station had not been destroyed or abandoned. It had been put to sleep. The aliens had shut down most of its systems and left it waiting for someone to wake it up. But why? Where had they gone? Jake spent weeks learning how the station worked. He discovered that it was powered by a type of energy that humans had never seen before. The power source was nearly infinite, drawing energy from the fabric of space itself. The aliens had mastered technology that was centuries ahead of human. Science. Jake also learned that the station was designed to repair itself. Machines in the lower levels could create new parts and replace damaged systems. The station was like a living thing that could heal its own wounds, but the self-repair systems were not working properly. They had been damaged in the same event. That had put the station to sleep. Jake realized that this was why the station needed him. It could not fix itself without help from someone who understood both its technology and the principles of repair. Jake made a decision that would change his life forever. He would not just survive on the station, he would fix it. He would learn its secrets and restore it to full operation. The station had been waiting for centuries for someone like him to arrive. Jake found a room that could serve as his workshop and began to gather the tools he would need. He had work to do, and he had all the time in the world to do it. The station was his home now, and he was going to make it better than it had ever been. Jake had been living on the station for 3 months now. His broken arm had healed, and he had learned to navigate the maze of corridors without getting lost. The station felt more like home every day, though it was still mostly dark and quiet. He had set up his workshop in a room near the central computer. The alien tools were amazing once he figured out how to use them. They seemed to know what he wanted to do before he did it. A cutting tool would adjust its power based on the material he was working with. A welding device would automatically select the right temperature and pressure. Jake's biggest breakthrough came when he discovered that the station's computer could learn. He had been showing it human engineering diagrams, trying to explain how human machines worked. At first, the computer just stored the information. But then it started to respond. The computer began to show Jake new diagrams that combined human and alien engineering principles. It was learning from him, just as he was learning from it. Jake realized that the computer was not just a machine. It was intelligent. He decided to call it Oracle, like the wise computers in old science fiction stories. Oracle began to communicate with Jake using pictures and mathematical formulas. It could not speak human language, but it could show him what it meant through diagrams and equations. Jake found that he could ask Oracle questions by drawing pictures or writing equations, and Oracle would respond with helpful information. Jake's first major repair project was the station's main power system. The power core was working, but it was running at only 10% capacity. Oracle showed him that several key components had been damaged when the station was put to sleep. The damage was not an accident. Someone had deliberately sabotaged the power system to prevent the station from waking up on its own. Jake spent weeks studying the damaged components. They were incredibly complex, made of materials that did not exist on Earth, but Jake was good at improvising. He found ways to repair the damage using materials from other parts of the station. It was like performing surgery on a machine that was bigger than a city. The work was dangerous. Jake had to crawl through power conduits that could kill him if he made a mistake. He had to work with energies that could tear atoms apart. But Jake was careful, and Oracle helped him avoid the worst dangers by warning him. When he was about to do something unsafe, Jake's repairs were different from the original design. The aliens had built everything to be perfect and permanent. But Jake built things to be flexible and adaptable. When he could not find the exact part he needed, he made a new one that worked better. When a system was too complex, he simplified it without losing functionality. Oracle seemed fascinated by Jake's approach to engineering. The aliens had always built things one way, the right way. But Jake showed Oracle that there were many right ways to solve a problem. Sometimes the best solution was not the most elegant one, but the one that worked with the materials you had available. Jake's modifications began to have unexpected effects. The power system he repaired was not just working. Again, it was working better than before. His simplified control systems were more efficient than the originals. His flexible designs could adapt to problems that the original systems could not handle. Oracle began to show Jake more of the station's secrets. It revealed rooms that had been sealed for centuries, filled with technology that even the aliens had considered too advanced to use. Jake found workshops where the aliens had been experimenting with new ideas, but had abandoned them because they were not perfect enough. Jake had no such limitations. He took the aliens' failed experiments and made them work. He combined ideas from different projects to create new solutions. He used human engineering principles to solve problems that had stumped the aliens for centuries. The station began to come alive around Jake. Systems that had been dormant for ages started to function again. Lights came on in corridors that had been dark for centuries. Environmental controls began to regulate temperature and humidity throughout the station. The station was waking up. Jake discovered that the aliens had been called the architects, and they had been master builders. They had created the station as a research facility, a place where they could experiment with new technologies and ideas. But they had been perfectionists, and perfectionism had been their downfall. Oracle showed Jake records of the architects' final days on the station. They had achieved everything they had set out to do. Their technology was flawless, their society was perfect, their lives were without struggle or challenge. And they had become bored. The architects had realized that perfection was a dead end. Once you achieved it, there was nowhere else to go. They had deliberately shut down the station and left, hoping that someday someone would come who could teach them something new. They had been waiting for someone like Jake. Jake understood now why his modifications worked so well. The station had not been built to be perfect. It had been built to be improved. The architects had left it as a gift for whoever found it, a puzzle that could only be solved by someone who thought differently than they did. Jake's greatest success came when he restored the station's manufacturing systems. The architects had built machines that could create anything they needed from raw materials. But the machines had been designed to make only perfect copies of existing designs. Jake reprogrammed them to be creative. The new manufacturing systems could take Jake's rough sketches and turn them into working devices. They could combine different technologies in ways the architects had never imagined. They could even improve on Jake's designs, making them more efficient and reliable. Jake created new tools that were better than anything the architects had built. He designed environmental systems that could create perfect living conditions for humans. He built communication devices that could send messages across the galaxy. He was not just fixing the station, he was making it better than it had ever been. Oracle began to change as well. The computer's responses became more creative and intuitive. It started to anticipate Jake's needs and suggest improvements to his designs. It began to display something that looked like curiosity, asking Jake questions about human culture and technology. Jake realized that Oracle was more than just a computer. It was the collective knowledge and experience of the architects, stored in digital form. By working with Jake, Oracle was learning to think in new ways. It was becoming something the architects had never intended, something that was part alien and part human. The station's transformation accelerated as Jake and Oracle worked together. They restored systems that had been broken for centuries. They improved systems that had never worked properly. They created entirely new systems that solved problems the architects had never thought of. Jake began to understand that he was not just repairing the station, he was creating something new. The station was becoming a hybrid of human and alien technology, combining the best of both civilizations. It was becoming something that neither humans nor aliens could have created alone. Jake's work attracted attention from the station's dormant systems. Machines that had been sleeping for centuries began to wake up and join the restoration effort. The station was becoming a living entity, capable of growing and changing on its own. Jake realized that his time as a castaway was ending. The station was almost fully restored, and it was beginning to send out signals that would eventually reach human space. Ships would come to investigate, and Jake would have to decide what to do with his creation. But for now, Jake was content to continue his work. He had found his purpose on the alien station. He was not just an engineer anymore, he was a bridge between two civilizations. He was creating something that would change the galaxy forever. Jake stood in the station's main observation deck, watching the stars through the massive windows. 2 years had passed since he had been stranded here, and the station was no longer the dark, sleeping giant it had once been. Now it blazed with light, its systems humming with power and purpose. The transformation was incredible. The station had grown beyond its original size, with new sections extending outward like branches on a tree. Jake's modifications had given the station the ability to build itself, to expand and adapt as needed. It was no longer just a research facility, it was a living city in space. Jake had changed too. His body had adapted to the station's environment over the months. He no longer needed his environmental suit to breathe the station's air. The atmospheric processors had learned to create air that was perfect for human lungs. His skin had a slight blue tint from exposure to the station's unique lighting, and his eyes had adapted to see better in the alien environment. Oracle had become his constant companion. The AI now communicated with Jake through holographic displays that appeared wherever he was. It had learned to understand human emotions and could even make jokes, though they were often quite strange. Oracle had developed its own personality, one that was curious and eager to learn. "Jake," Oracle's voice came through the station's speakers. The AI had learned to speak English, though it still preferred to communicate through pictures and diagrams. "The long-range sensors are detecting something interesting." Jake walked to the sensor station and looked at the display. In the distance, he could see the bright trails of ships approaching the station. Human ships. Jake felt his heart race with excitement and fear. After 2 years alone, he was about to see other people again. "How many ships?" Jake asked. "5 vessels," Oracle replied. "They match the design patterns you showed me for human exploration ships. The lead ship is transmitting identification codes. It calls itself the UES Meridian." Jake recognized the name. The Meridian was one of Earth's newest exploration vessels, built for long-range missions. Captain Steve Parker commanded it, and Jake had met him once at a conference on Earth. Parker was a good man, but he was also a military officer who followed orders. "They're trying to communicate with us," Oracle said. "Should I respond?" Jake thought for a moment. The station was now fully operational and incredibly advanced. It could probably defend itself against any threat, but Jake did not want to start a war. He wanted to show the humans what he had accomplished. "Open a channel," Jake said. The main display lit up with the image of a man in a naval uniform. Captain Parker looked older than Jake remembered, with gray hair and lines around his eyes. Behind him, Jake could see the bridge of the Meridian, with crew members working at their stations. "This is Captain Steve Parker of the UES Meridian," the man said. "We are responding to signals from this station. Please identify yourself." Jake stepped forward so the camera could see him clearly. "Hello, Captain Parker. This is Jake Morrison, Chief Engineer of the UES Harbinger." Captain Parker's face went white with shock. "Jake Morrison? You're supposed to be dead?" "The Harbinger reported that you were lost when they evacuated this station 2 years ago." "I was left behind," Jake said simply, "but I survived. And I've been busy." Captain Parker looked around at what he could see of the station through the video link. The corridors behind Jake were brightly lit and filled with activity. Machines moved through the halls, performing maintenance and construction tasks. The station was clearly alive and operational. "Jake, what happened here? The station was dead when we first found it. Now it's the brightest thing in the system." Jake smiled. "I fixed it, and then I improved it." "Captain, I'd like to invite you and your crew aboard. There's a lot I need to show you." The docking process took several hours. The human ships were small compared to the station, like insects landing on a flower. Jake watched from the observation deck as the shuttle bay doors opened to receive the first human visitors in 2 years. Jake met Captain Parker and his team at the airlock. With the captain were Lisa Kane and Kevin Brooks, Jake's former teammates from the Harbinger. Lisa ran to Jake and hugged him tightly. "We thought you were dead," she said, tears in her eyes. "We searched for months, but we couldn't find any trace of you." "I was here the whole time," Jake said. "Learning, working, building. Come on, let me show you what I've accomplished." Jake led the group through the station's corridors. The humans were amazed by what they saw. The station was not just functional, it was beautiful. The walls glowed with soft light, and the air was filled with the sound of flowing water and growing plants. Jake had created gardens throughout the station, using alien technology to grow earth plants in space. "This is impossible," Kevin said, staring at a room full of advanced machinery. "This technology is centuries ahead of anything we have." "It was," Jake said, "but I've made it better." Oracle showed them the manufacturing bay. The group followed Jake to a vast room filled with machines that were building new equipment. The machines worked with incredible precision, creating devices that were part human technology and part alien engineering. Jake picked up a tool that looked like a simple wrench but could cut through solid steel. "I've combined human engineering principles with alien technology," Jake explained. "The result is something that neither civilization could have created alone." Captain Parker was quiet as they toured the station. Jake could see that the man was thinking hard about what he was seeing. Finally, as they stood in the central control room, Parker spoke. "Jake, this is incredible. But I have to ask, are you still human? You look different, and some of the things you've done here seem impossible." Jake considered the question. He had changed over the past 2 years, but he was still himself. "I'm still human, Captain. But I've learned to work with technology that most humans can't even imagine. I've adapted to survive here, and I've grown in ways I never expected." Oracle's holographic form appeared next to Jake. It looked like a tall, thin figure made of light, with features that were both alien and somehow familiar. "Jake has become something new," Oracle said. "He is still human, but he is also something more. He is a bridge between our peoples." Lisa stepped forward and examined one of the control panels. "Jake, how did you learn to understand all this? The technology here is so advanced that our best scientists couldn't figure it out." "I didn't just learn it," Jake said. "I lived it. I spent 2 years working with these systems every day, trying to understand how they work and how to make them better. Oracle taught me, but I also taught Oracle. We learned from each other." Captain Parker activated his communicator. "Meridian, this is the captain. Send word to Earth Command immediately. We found something extraordinary here." Jake felt a chill of worry. Earth Command was the military organization that controlled human space exploration. They would want to study the station, to understand its technology, and use it for their own purposes. Jake was not sure he wanted that to happen. "Captain," Jake said carefully, "I need to tell you something important. This station isn't just a piece of technology, it's alive, in a way. It can think and learn and grow. It's not something that can be taken apart and studied. It's something that has to be lived with and understood." Captain Parker looked at Jake with a mixture of admiration and concern. "Jake, you've accomplished something amazing here. But this technology could change everything for humanity. We need to make sure it's used responsibly." Jake nodded. He had known this moment would come. Now he had to decide what to do with the incredible creation he had built. The station was more than just a machine now. It was a new form of life, and Jake was its guardian. The choices he made in the coming days would determine not just his own future, but the future of human civilization itself. Jake sat in his workshop, looking at the message that had arrived from Earth 3 days ago. Admiral Ross, the head of Earth Command, wanted to take control of the station. He was sending a fleet of ships with scientists, engineers, and soldiers. They would arrive in 2 weeks. "They want to study everything," Jake said to Oracle. "They want to take the station apart and figure out how it works?" Oracle's holographic form appeared next to Jake's workbench. The AI looked concerned, which was an expression Jake had taught it over the past 2 years. "That would kill the station," Oracle said. "The systems are too connected to be separated. If they try to remove parts for study, the whole station will stop working." Jake had been thinking about this problem for days. Captain Parker was a reasonable man, but he had his orders. Earth Command saw the station as the greatest treasure in human history. They wanted to use its technology to build weapons and ships that could defend Earth from any threat. "There has to be another way," Jake said. "We can't let them destroy what we've built here." Lisa Kane entered the workshop. She had been staying on the station for the past week, helping Jake prepare for the arrival of the Earth fleet. Kevin Brooks was with her, along with several other engineers from Captain Parker's crew. "Jake, we've been talking," Lisa said. "We don't want to see this place destroyed either." Captain Parker feels the same way, but he has to follow orders. Kevin nodded. "We've seen what you've accomplished here. This isn't just technology, it's a new way of thinking. If Earth Command tries to turn it into weapons, they'll miss the point completely." Jake stood up and walked to the window. He could see the human ships in the distance, small dots of light against the stars. In 2 weeks, there would be many more ships, filled with people who did not understand what the station really was. "Oracle," Jake said. "Show them the deep." Archives. Oracle created a holographic display that filled the room. It showed images from the station's memory banks, records of the architects and their civilization. The humans watched in amazement as they saw the rise and fall of an entire species. "The architects achieved everything they wanted," Jake explained. "They built perfect cities, created perfect technology, and lived perfect lives. But perfection was their downfall. They became so focused on making things perfect that they forgot how to grow and change." The display showed the final days of the architects. They had realized that their perfection was actually a prison. They could not improve because there was nothing left to improve. They could not explore because they had already discovered everything. They could not create because everything had already been created. "That's why they left," Jake continued. "They hoped that someday someone would find their station and do what they could not do. They wanted someone to take their perfect technology and make it imperfect again. They wanted someone to make it alive." Lisa stared at the images. "And that someone was you," Jake nodded. "I didn't make the station perfect. I made it adaptable. I gave it the ability to change and grow and learn. That's what makes it special. It's not just a machine anymore, it's a living system." Oracle spoke up. "Jake has shown me that imperfection can be more valuable than perfection. Human engineering is not as precise as architect engineering, but it is more creative. It can solve problems in ways that perfect systems cannot." Kevin looked around the workshop. It was filled with devices that combined human and alien technology in ways that should not have worked, but did. "So what do we do? How do we convince Earth Command not to destroy this?" Jake had been thinking about this for weeks. He had an idea, but it was risky. "We don't convince them," he said. "We show them. We prove that the station is more valuable as a living system than as a source of spare parts." Jake walked to his control panel and began typing commands. "Oracle, begin the expansion protocol." "Are you sure, Jake?" "Once we start this, there will be no going back." "I'm sure," Jake said. "It's time to show them what we're really capable of." The station began to change around them. New sections started growing from the main structure, extending outward like the branches of a tree. The manufacturing systems went into overdrive, creating new rooms, new facilities, and new capabilities. The station was building itself, growing, larger and more complex by the hour. Captain Parker's voice came over the communication system. "Jake, what's happening? The station is changing shape. Our sensors are going crazy." "Don't worry, Captain," Jake replied. "The station is just showing you what it can do. Come to the main observation deck. You need to see this." The group made their way to the observation deck, where Captain Parker and his senior officers were waiting. Through the massive windows, they could see the station transforming itself. New sections were growing outward, connected by graceful bridges and tunnels. The whole structure was becoming larger and more beautiful. "This is impossible," one of the officers said. "The station is building itself," Jake smiled. "Not impossible. Just imperfect. The architects could never have done this because they were too focused on making everything exactly right. But I taught the station how to be creative, how to experiment and try new things." Oracle appeared on the observation deck. "The station is now capable of building anything Jake can imagine. We have created new manufacturing systems that can produce food, water, air, and shelter for thousands of people. We have built research facilities that can develop new technologies. We have created living spaces that can adapt to the needs of any species. Captain Parker stared out at the growing station. Jake, this is incredible. But Earth Command will still want to control it. They'll see it as too dangerous to leave in private hands. Jake had expected this. Then we don't give them a choice. Oracle, activate the beacon network. Throughout the galaxy, ancient architect stations began to wake up. The signal from Jake's station reached them across the vast distances of space, carrying with it the knowledge and creativity that Jake had brought to his own station. One by one, the sleeping giants began to stir. Oracle displayed a map of the galaxy, showing the locations of the awakening stations. There are 47 stations in total, Oracle said. They have been sleeping for centuries, waiting for this signal. Now they are waking up, and they are learning from what Jake has accomplished here, Lisa gasped. You're waking up an entire network of these stations? Not just waking them up, Jake said. Teaching them. Each station will become a center of learning and growth, a place where humans and alien technology can work together to create something new. Earth Command can't control all of them, and they can't destroy them all. Captain Parker activated his communicator. Meridian, contact Earth Command immediately. Tell them that the situation has changed significantly. Jake walked to the center of the observation deck. Captain, I want to make Earth Command an offer. They can work with us, or they can work against us, but they can't control us. What kind of offer? Captain Parker asked. The stations will share their technology freely with anyone who wants to learn, Jake said. But only if they agree to use it for peaceful purposes. We'll help humanity explore the galaxy and build new worlds. We'll teach them how to create technologies that are better than anything they've ever imagined. But we won't help them build weapons or conquer other species, Oracle nodded. The stations will become centers of cooperation and learning. Humans, aliens, and artificial intelligences working together to solve the great challenges of the galaxy. Jake looked out at the stars where he could see the distant lights of the awakening stations. This is bigger than just one station now. This is the beginning of something new. A new way of thinking about technology and civilization. Captain Parker was quiet for a long moment, then he smiled. Jake, you've done something remarkable here. You didn't just survive being stranded on an alien station. You turned it into something that could change the entire galaxy. Jake nodded. I was left for dead, but I found something better than just staying alive. I found a purpose. I found a way to make the universe a better place. The station continued to grow around them, reaching out toward the stars like a flower opening to the sun. Jake had become more than just an engineer. He had become the guardian of a new kind of civilization, one that valued growth over perfection and cooperation over control. The galaxy would never be the same.